A Day of Fire. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On August 6, 1945, the world watched in horror as Hiroshima, Japan, vanished beneath a blinding flash of light. The city, once vibrant and full of life, was reduced to rubble in an instant. A mushroom cloud that towered miles into the sky signaled the unprecedented destruction. The detonation of Little Boy, an atomic bomb with the force of 15,000 tons of TNT, instantly killed an estimated 80,000 people. Buildings were flattened, and fires erupted across the city. Thousands more would succumb to their injuries and radiation sickness in the weeks and months that followed. The survivors, known as hibakusha, faced unimaginable suffering and long-term health issues. 3 days later, on August 9th, the United States dropped a second atomic bomb, Fat Man, on the port city of Nagasaki. The bomb exploded with a force of 21,000 tons of TNT. The devastation mirrored that of Hiroshima, with 40,000 lives extinguished in a heartbeat. The city's infrastructure was obliterated, and the human toll was staggering. Countless others were left to face a slow, agonizing death. The impact of radiation exposure led to severe health complications, including cancer and genetic damage. These two bombings, the only instances of nuclear weapons used in warfare, marked a turning point in human history. They demonstrated the terrifying power of nuclear weapons and the potential for mass destruction. They unleashed a force of destruction never before witnessed, leaving an indelible scar on the planet and its people. The psychological and emotional impact on the survivors and their descendants is profound. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not merely acts of war. They were unprecedented tragedies that exposed the terrifying potential of nuclear weapons. The world was forever changed by these events. The aftermath of these attacks continues to serve as a stark reminder of the urgent need for peace and nuclear disarmament. Memorials and annual ceremonies honor the victims and advocate for a world free of nuclear weapons. The devastation wrought by the atomic bombs extended far beyond the immediate blast zones. The environmental and ecological damage was immense, affecting the land and water for years to come. Fires raged through the ruined cities, fueled by the debris and intensified by the unusual atmospheric conditions created by the explosions. The infernos consumed everything in their path, leaving nothing but ashes and memories. The immediate aftermath of the atomic bombings was a scene of unimaginable devastation. Buildings were reduced to rubble, streets were littered with corpses, and the air was thick with smoke, dust, and the stench of burning flesh. The blast wave, traveling faster than the speed of sound, flattened everything in its path. Those who survived the initial blast faced a horrific array of injuries, severe burns, shrapnel wounds, and radiation sickness. Medical facilities, already overwhelmed by the ongoing war, were ill-equipped to handle the sheer number of casualties. Many died from their injuries simply because there were not enough doctors, nurses, or medical supplies to treat them. The scale of the destruction was unprecedented in human history. The bombs had not only killed tens of thousands but had also obliterated the very fabric of these once thriving cities. The destruction extended far beyond the physical structures of the cities. The social fabric, the networks of families and communities was ripped apart. The lucky ones had perished instantly. Others were left to wander the ruins, searching for loved ones amidst the unimaginable carnage. To fully grasp the horrors unleashed upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it is essential to understand the science behind the atomic bomb. These devastating weapons changed the course of history and left an indelible mark on humanity. These weapons derive their power from nuclear fission, the process of splitting atoms to release enormous amounts of energy. This energy is what makes atomic bombs so incredibly destructive. When the atomic bomb detonates, it creates a superheated sphere of air, known as a fireball, with temperatures reaching millions of degrees Celsius. This fireball is the initial stage of the explosion and is responsible for much of the immediate destruction. This fireball expands rapidly, creating a shock wave that travels faster than the speed of sound, obliterating everything in its path. The shock wave is powerful enough to flatten buildings and cause widespread devastation. The intense heat from the explosion also releases a massive amount of thermal radiation, causing severe burns to exposed skin and igniting fires that can rage for days. These fires contribute to the overall destruction and can create firestorms that consume entire cities. But perhaps the most insidious effect of the atomic bomb is the release of ionizing radiation. This radiation can linger in the environment, posing long-term health risks to survivors and future generations. This invisible, odorless killer can penetrate deep inside the human body, damaging DNA and increasing the risk of cancer and other diseases. The effects of radiation exposure can be felt for decades, affecting not just those who were present during the explosion but also their descendants. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were of different designs, but both unleashed unimaginable destruction through the same basic principles of physics. The sheer scale of the devastation was unprecedented and left the world grappling with the consequences. The Little Boy bomb, fueled by uranium, utilized a gun-type fission reaction, which was a relatively simple yet highly effective design, while the Fat Man bomb, fueled by plutonium, employed a more complex implosion method. This design was more sophisticated and required precise engineering to achieve the desired explosive yield. In the immediate aftermath of the atomic bombings, many survivors appeared relatively unharmed, walking through the ruins of their cities, unaware of the invisible danger lurking within their bodies. They were unaware that a silent killer had already begun to work its way through their bodies. Radiation, a force as deadly as the blast itself. Ionizing radiation, an invisible byproduct of nuclear fission, can penetrate human tissue, causing damage that is not immediately visible. This radiation damages DNA and disrupts cellular function, leading to a cascade of health issues. The damage can manifest in a variety of ways, affecting different parts of the body and varying in severity. Symptoms can range from mild burns and nausea, which might seem manageable at first, to life-threatening conditions such as cancers and organ failure, which can develop over time. The severity of radiation sickness depends on several factors, including the dose of radiation received, the distance from the hypocenter, the point on the ground directly beneath the explosion, the duration of exposure, and whether the individual was shielded from the blast by buildings or other structures. Those closest to the hypocenter received the highest doses of radiation and suffered the most acute effects, experiencing severe symptoms almost immediately. Symptoms of radiation sickness include nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, as well as hair loss, fever, and internal bleeding, which can be particularly distressing. In severe cases, it can lead to organ failure, where vital organs cease to function properly, sepsis, a life-threatening response to infection, and ultimately death. Adding to the horror, many survivors who initially appeared healthy later developed long-term health complications as a result of their radiation exposure, which continued to affect their lives for years. These delayed effects, which could surface years or even decades after the bombings, included an increased risk of various cancers, such as leukemia and cataracts, as well as birth defects in their children, highlighting the intergenerational impact of radiation. The legacy of radiation exposure from the atomic bombings is a stark reminder of the long-lasting and far-reaching consequences of nuclear warfare. Over time, the survivors of the atomic bombings experienced a myriad of health issues. Radiation exposure led to increased rates of cancer, chronic illnesses, and genetic mutations. These long-term health effects have been studied extensively, revealing the profound and lasting impact of nuclear warfare on human health. The environmental aftermath of the bombings was equally devastating. The intense heat and radiation caused immediate destruction of flora and fauna, leading to long-term ecological damage. Soil and water contamination persisted, affecting the local ecosystem and agriculture for decades. The bombings left a scar on the environment that serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of nuclear weapons. The Hibakusha, or survivors of the bombings, have shared their harrowing experiences to ensure the world never forgets. Their testimonies tell of unimaginable suffering, loss, and resilience. They speak not only of the physical and emotional pain but also of their hope for a future without nuclear weapons. Listening to their stories is a powerful reminder of the human cost of war. In light of these devastating consequences, there is a growing call for nuclear disarmament. Advocates argue that the existence of nuclear weapons poses a constant threat to humanity. By working towards disarmament, we can prevent future tragedies and promote global peace. It is a call to action for governments and individuals alike to strive for a world free of nuclear weapons.